Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ClashCast podcast. I'm Colton Cruz.
I'm Ashley Brown.
Brianna Marshall.
Wyatt Garland.
Welcome to the podcast where we analyze and talk about anime.
And punch things with our mouths.
Today's topic, CGI and anime.
And joining us now is Ashley Brown, the newest member of the ClashCast team. Yay. Ready to deliver some, hard-hitting content.
Yeah.
And today, we're talking about CGI.
CGI anime.
So, for those of you who are uninitiated, CGI stands for computer-generated imagery.
We see a lot of that these days.
Yep.
Yeah, so obviously it has become kind of the central form of creating animation anymore. And just a quick caveat, there's digital anime, which is one thing where, they switched to, back in the 70s where they would scan the cells in and do, the physical, cutting digitally. But we're kind of talking about more, computer-generated imagery as the art in the anime, just to be specific there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the newest one I think you were talking about was Ruby, right?
Yeah, with Ruby itself, coming from, just the roots with, remind me the name one more time.
Ruby.
The people that started Rooster Teeth.
Oh,
yeah.
Monty with Monty. The lead animator on that was Monty, and he started with Rooster Teeth, and they've rolled it into it's a full franchise. I mean, you can buy Pops figures and stuff, and it's all animated.
It's legit
with CGI, but
100%.
They've 100% proven that model of we were a little indie animation studio, and we brought to bear our own creative content in CGI because CGI allowed them to make it. Yeah.
CGI is cheap.
Yeah. And now they have their own Netflix original.
Yeah.
It's
video games, Netflix originals, cosplayers.
Oh my gosh.
Pull in that Scythe, man.
That Scythe is insane.
I remember seeing the original video back when it was just an edgelord sort of anime music video on YouTube, and there was just some girl fighting wolves, and I was like, oh, is this some Little Red Riding Hood thing? She's got a scythe, but that was their
and
test.
It was but
Now what's crazy is watching it the first time, I'd never seen Red vs. Blue or any of their stuff before.
Right.
So in watching it, I was like, this is such a different type of anime than I'd ever seen before. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this is actually really interesting, and I had to research how was this created, just because I'd never honestly, it's probably my real first experience with CGI in anime, to be fully honest.
Yeah.
Well, it's
100%.
interesting because, you saying, with Red versus Blue and, it coming from, YouTube and, Monty and stuff, that CGI is, almost entirely a different thing because all of that came from Machinima, which is using, the video game engines to, make these stories. And so, it was all of these people who all of a sudden, with video game technology and, computer technology, they had all of these pre-made pieces that they could kind of play dolls with and create all this stuff. And I think that is the height of CGI not only showed up and made an impact, but then it's being recycled into new content already.
So you said your first experience. Unfortunately, I was not granted a fully expansive universe to play in the first time I saw CGI. It stands out to you, especially back in the day where they just would blink at the budget and be like, okay, I know what we agreed on in the storyboard, but I'm not animating this giant robot. There were things that just couldn't be done, so they would cut the budget and put some CGI in there, and the contrast was tough.
Right, that ugly, uncanny valley is, I think, what most people would think of when we say CGI in anime. It's oh, so you mean the cars, or something where it's it's something with a lot of 3D movement that just needs to be drawn at proportions over and over again, and the animators are just I'm not drawing tires for 100 frames the exact same size.
This isn't
difficult.
This isn't the Big O where they're just gonna recycle these beautiful car footages. No, they needed something that worked reliably, and I think one of them was what was it? It was definitely Ghost in the Shell standalone complex.
Oh Jesus!
And
that's some early stuff.
For me, that kind of worked a little bit because they do those little chibi robot things. Mm-hmm. They weren't necessarily chibi, but they acted chibi. They were the comic relief. The little security tanks. They made those completely CGI. But they were very specific about saying that
they kind of let one set piece kind of exist,
and that
as the CGI.
It worked for me, but the most egregious, personally, the most egregious moment was the Full Metal Alchemist movie, based off of the original series,
God.
Conqueror of Shambhala.
I barely remember that movie.
It's like a hot mess, man. It is.
No, I was made to watch that because I watched like Full Metal Alchemist not like 2 years ago for the first time, and then I was like, and that I watched the original Full Metal Alchemist, and then watched the movie in between, and then gave myself like 2 months to like forget about it so I could watch Brotherhood.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember watching the movie and being like, I don't understand this art
that's
at all.
the thing. The thing about it is it was Frankenstein from the out of their ass ending they wrote there, and then they just threw in this stuff.
I love that ending.
Stop it.
It is very like avant-garde. Fuck you.
No, to
like,
me, I prefer it to the anime and the Brotherhood ending. Like 100%.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, the Brotherhood ending is very traditional. Like, it makes sense. I get what you're saying.
No, it's true. I'm not a...
The
tangenting.
Moving on.
CGI.
CGI.
The animation there, what is it? They had the big ship or something that came through the portal.
Yeah.
Like, they were just like, we're not drawing that. And when they did that, I remember that was the first time where I was kind of like, I had enough respect for the series, enough respect for what the movie technically meant for the series. I was starting to understand like animation, I was starting to understand comics about how it was a big deal that this anime that got produced off of only 4 of the original manga had a movie adaptation, was that popular. And then, but I mean, when I saw that, I felt very betrayed in the sense like, they flubbed it.
To be just a little fair to it, all anime movies from series are garbage. Like,
that is
garbage.
100%.
Like,
At least it's Naruto. I really like Naruto anime.
this will be a recurring
really
theme.
Okay.
Where we say something sweeping about anime, and
Yeah.
Ashley's like, well, Naruto.
Well,
Naruto.
So
You
what
just
was
can't go
your
wrong.
first CGI break?
I think it was actually when I was in Japan.
Okay.
So the movie actually came out in 2004, but I was in Japan in 2007, and it's this movie called Appleseed.
Appleseed.
So it's weird because like I'm so used to like the hand drawn like 2D like traditional stuff, but
well,
like
we even all got like hooked like really young, like before we like almost ever knew what an anime was. Like on like the first seasons of Pokemon and like Dragon Ball, it's like, oh, that's all that like hand drawn like stuff. It's not great animation, but
it's so cool. Yeah.
Exactly, like it's very traditional. But go on, I'm sorry.
But no, it's like that's the truth. It's like we're so used to this, but then like when I would see something that's like 3D and CGI, I'm just like, what is this? This is so foreign. Being in a foreign place where anime is foreign, I'm just like, I've never seen this in my life. Like having to cope all that, it's so weird. And then like with like the anime live adaptations and like the CGI and that, it's just like
it's
whole
interesting.
different turn.
The CGI in live action anime movies right now looks as bad as CGI did in regular anime.
Yeah, that's where it's going.
There's
so
moments
funny,
where it's so bad, it's hilarious. God, I'm trying to think.
Well, like Gintama makes
Attack on
it
Titan.
work.
That's what I say. Gintama's probably my favorite.
Gintama makes it work because
CGI.
it's supposed to look kind of dumb, and they mix in a lot of practical effects to kind of give you. It's
Yeah.
like no, like it all can look wacky. It's not
Yeah.
just that like we ran out of money with CGI, but
Right.
you just said it.
She already.
Attack on Titan, yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
They.
No.
Yes.
I hate that movie. I hate
Are we
it.
talking about the movie or the
What are you talking about,
anime?
the anime?
The movie, no, like the
Oh,
live
I
action.
know.
The live action
movie is what I
okay.
hate.
Oh, that's it.
I
Where they're just like, let's make it as dark and red as possible. Like,
just
Sweeping
Ugh.
kangaroo. Yeah, that was a rough movie. That was not a good one. They were wearing just like these morph suits
I
stuffed with
refuse to
styrofoam.
see
well, that's
it.
like it's like what they did with
It's
the Gantz movie. That same thing, the live action Gantz. Like, and it's not bad because they do mix in like. Again, like there are ways you can lean on it. Like leaning on it for humor is good. Leaning on it for horror is actually like works out pretty well.
Yeah.
Uncanny
Because
Valley,
they can mix in again those practical effects to kind of make it. It's like, oh, I've seen fucked up Japanese movies, so like me going from like this like horrendous like I don't know like drill penis to like it being CJ doesn't really like affect like how
Yeah.
horrified
You're
I am.
like, all right, cool. It's kind of like even in the original Evil Dead.
Yeah,
Where they
exactly.
throw in claymation.
Yeah.
He completely goes overboard with the third movie, but that's the whole point.
Yeah,
But there's brief moments of stop motion and claymation.
But like in the
this-
context, it is really
it's-
scary and like
it just
works.
gets
Yeah.
pulled out for a little bit, and then they work it in exactly. So it can be done well. I haven't seen too much of Ruby, but I remember seeing that you can do a lot of really cool things with it. So I think it was one of the fight scenes. and their fight scenes are pretty...
Fight choreography
not
is a
bad.
strong point. of
Exactly,
Legacy,
because they're not under any pressure.
Yeah.
Like a lot of animation, hand-drawn and traditional stuff, it's hard to do.
Well, like, back to the point we were talking about, like, the things you use animation for, like, yeah, Cars was like a point, like, that's what, like, Initial D, all of the car races are CGI.
Yeah.
And that's a beloved hand-drawn thing that, like,
Yeah.
traced everything. But on that flip side, a lot of the things we see CGI in modern anime for is to do animation movements
Yeah.
that would be really intensive. So, like what you're saying with the fight scenes, like, baseline CGI, you can bullet cam all
Yes.
around a scene in
Yeah.
slow motion, speed up, all with, mouse clicks rather than having to have, like, an animator, like, draw like something move around like a two-dimensional object.
I think like the
so
craziest
it's so much easier.
Yeah, the craziest thing for me with Ruby is there's like this scene where they all kind of just have to get catapulted off of a like
It's towards the
mountain.
CGI.
No, it's like in the beginning.
Yeah, it's like right in the beginning. They
Okay.
get catapulted off this mountain, and then they pretty much have to like start fighting immediately after that. And like the difference in like from the catapulting to the fighting, you were just like, oh, there's just a massive difference in like the art in these two things, because the catapulting is very obviously like two-dimensional because they're just going in one direction, and then they land, and then there's all this stuff happening,
Swirling.
and it was almost like motion sickness.
Yeah,
watching
that
them.
is well, that's 100%. So you do get a little caught up into it. What is it? They did a really good pull around in the Berserk movies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because
and,
they
and that
mixed
was
it.
and that was another one too, where like they did the swirl arounds, but like in the Berserk movies, the CGI particularly was effective for the scale. It's like we can copy and paste 100,000 soldiers
Yeah, you need
that nobody would ever draw, but like they're all detailed and like
Right.
that kind of simulated like what the Berserk panels looked like
Yeah.
in a way.
There was some attempt to it, and I mean it's only gonna get better basically. What is it? I think the best example is Kill la Kill, right?
Yeah, so to talk about like Kill la Kill, everybody will look at Kill la Kill and they're like, oh, it's so stylized, it must be all hand drawn. Every single bit of Kill la Kill, except for the postcarding when they open up to like, one like really stylized just panel that's usually still.
Yeah.
Every other thing was CGI created. It was all models that
I
they
actually
went
didn't
through.
know that.
They
Oh, yeah?
they
It
rendered
gets
it. So like regular animation too, like is not a constant frame rate. Like video, like you guys are watching right now, we're shooting at 30 frames a second. So every single like the way the video works, is it's 30 still frames a second. When they do animation for this is like everywhere. They don't do as many frames because you don't need as much movement. Like if something's staying still or there's just a hand movement, maybe you just draw that part different.
Huh.
For Kill la Kill, they actually rendered it all out in 24 frames a second. And the director, and again, like the director got to have the creative control here because the animation ended up being so less strenuous. He went through and literally just manually clicked one at a time and deleted the frames he didn't want, like to make the animation like speed happen. So like he not only like was able to like template out like perfect frame rate, but also perfect motion, and then he was able to stylize it by going in and just deleting the frames he didn't like. And then after that, they had developed a plugin that literally takes all of the line detection that like the CGI had, and just put their style over top of it, like with the pen and ink. It's absolutely breathtaking and amazing.
Yeah, no,
It's-
that's definitely.
But like that's the thing, like we go from like my first experience with CGI and anime was
Oh, I'm sorry.
it's fine.
I didn't care about
It
yours.
was
Wow.
Visions of Escaflowne, and they do it
Oh.
only really in the first episode, and it's the there's a Japanese high school girl and a dragon and a prince fighting the dragon like pop out, and they do just the dragon in CGI, but it gives it this like otherworldly kind of like magical look. The CGI is not great, but like again they used it in a place where it's like it kind of like works for what we're doing.
That makes sense completely.
But no, like we go from like that to like Kill la Kill, which is like the ultimate like every bit of technology has made that anime work.
yeah, like
My-
you can't even compare like Ruby to Kill la Kill.
No.
Exactly.
Like
Well, Trigger is a different thing altogether. My sister has recently been diving back in, back on the horse, so to speak. She saw the 2010 Hunter x Hunter or Hunter x Hunter.
2011, Hunter
Yeah,
x Hunter.
2011. There we
Love
go.
Hunter x
and
Hunter.
and that
So good.
that just lit a fire inside her, and she was like looking for other things to watch. And I was like, well, if you can get through the first episode of Kill la Kill, then you can get through the rest of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she did, and she enjoyed it. But I remember watching the fight between Ryuko and Tetsugui, the first one. And when she first puts on Senketsu and she's just like, this is amazing! And they have this one panel where she's walking, but they're dragging her forward faster than
Exactly,
she's walking.
yeah.
That was beautiful.
But that's the thing that it works in Kill la Kill specific. I mean, like you can every second of Kill la Kill is like a piece of art. Like just in the way that they like move characters through screens. Like the anime openings where they fight like the hundreds of people like in the 1-star like uniforms. Like that's obviously CG. Like being able to watch it, but like I think that really like typifies as like no, like this is the whole thing. We can do stuff like this. Like it's beautiful.
Yeah,
absolutely.
What a potential. What a potential.
As we all like gloss into like Kill la Kill.
So good.
It has
It's
a
true.
way.
Yeah.
No, and then it's interesting to see kind of digital ways like that making their way into other art forms. Like no spoilers or anything, but like the newest season of Voltron like is a heavily CGI
The
show.
whole thing is CGI.
With a lot of anime based on, so like you're seeing kind of the opposite thing where you're seeing like a mostly CGI aesthetic like incorporate elements of anime like the opposite direction where normally we'd see like CGI injected into anime.
True.
But you end up getting things like the same thing happens in Gurren Lagann at the end where they do these still frames of the universe shots and they move all the characters around and it's like completely different art styles. Like the galaxies are clearly, photographs of galaxies, like recreations, but like then you've got the hyper stylized, hyper anime, mechs on top of that moving around.
Oh yeah.
They do a similar thing in Voltron where they have the mechs moving around and they do this kind of avant-garde thing where they put a 3D particle layer, which is something that you'd only be able to do with CG. Like it's rendered in the computer in 3D space. And instead of moving the like 3D figure's perspective around, they move that like whole background of particles around.
Oh, okay.
To make it look like the mechs are moving, and it's so interesting. But like, it is like the perfect like avant-garde like new like fusion of CGI and animation together.
We're getting to that point where there's a lot of new possibilities. I mean, say what you want about the new Berserk, and we did say what we wanted about the new Berserk. There's definitely moments.
I enjoyed it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And there was enjoyment to be got from it, and I got some too. But it's really just one of those things that it just has the potential to bring things to life that couldn't happen before. I mean, obviously, mecha, like, there's never going to be a mecha ever again without CGI because that's required. It's like a requirement for what we're doing now. But also, Berserk wouldn't have even... We wouldn't have even been able to explore as deep as we went into the story this time around with the first 2 seasons if it wasn't for CGI, because you can't... Some of those scenes, like, yes, if they had a budget that was astronomical, but there's no anime that's going to turn enough profit to draw that armor.
Right, it's just far too labor intensive. Like, no, I mean, because it's just alternative things too. It's like, no, I mean, we can't even, like, somebody will go get, like, 8 CGI jobs before, like, they can finish this one, like, like, hand-drawn job, and, like, that's just labor. And then, like, you look at a place like Japan where, like, it's a dwindling population. They have a small population, and it's a very tight labor force as far as, like, what people spend their times doing. Like, you can't waste a bunch of people's time drawing.
That's just that is animation in general.
Unfortunately,
like you need to have animators are lazy, but that's a good thing. Like it's a good thing.
Well, it's a job that has to get done. Like,
exactly, and it's before there's sort of like a sensibility with art, like things like Akira, which there's got to be some 3D. I mean, They did a lot of digital work, like, with it, like, in that same thing where I was kind of separating the two, where I was like, there's a lot of, like, digital animation that happens where they're using computers to help edit hand-drawn stuff. But Akira itself, I believe, does not have much CGI at all. I didn't want to be brazen enough to say it had none. But that movie took 10 years.
Exactly.
And that was because it was art, and that's good that we have projects that we've selected that, are worthy of that time. Mm-hmm. But realistically, if you want to get through some of these animes, like, you gotta find the most cost-effective ways.
Like, now, like, we're consuming so much anime, and like you guys have made the video already of like how it's becoming more mainstream. Like that means more people are wanting to consume it. Yeah. So you have to actually have the time to just be like, okay, we've got to just throw up this anime,
basically,
and then eventually Studio Ghibli's going to come out with something gorgeous. Yeah,
there are the premier studios that Trigger and
even
things like that.
Even like Studio Ghibli though. I mean, they leaned heavily. I mean, Princess Mononoke. I mean, look at that. Like, entire ending sequence they just crowned with CGI. And it looks beautiful and it worked for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where like that difference is. Like, I think sometimes we misconstrue traditionally CGI in anime with like cutting corners or like being like
Yeah.
poor quality, but like no, it's a time-saving tool. Unfortunately, for a long time, it was just a very obvious time-saving
Yeah.
tool.
Yeah,
It's
now
like-
we're working on making it more seamless to
Yeah.
where, and it's just like any CGI in any film. Like you look at like
Yeah.
regular like movies
Yeah.
and CGI in that too. Like that's a completely different thing.
Oh,
But like it's
yeah.
still like it's changed so much over time that now it's more seamless and more understandable and readable.
Right.
Yeah.
That now we are like, okay, now we actually appreciate this. Like kill a
Right.
kill.
Yeah.
I remember, like, this is... Forgive me for entering the hallowed ground of the mouse, but when Tangled first came out, I remember being very torn up about it because I was like, oh, so we're just not gonna do hand-drawn anymore? Is that what you're saying? Okay,
Yeah.
fine, all right, I'll see this. And I remember at the end of it, like, just completely being okay with it, being like, no, I
Right.
get it. Like,
Yeah.
sure. Like, we have gotten to the point now, like, where Pixar and, you know, like,
Well,
Disney, they can do some amazing
That's
things.
the thing. There's amazing things they can do, and there's new things we brought to the table. I mean, at a certain point, like if an animator sat down to a movie and was like, "We're only gonna hand draw everything," he'd be cutting off so much of what he could do with the animation. Like,
Yeah.
at this point, like it's a real opportunity. It's not just replacing like
Exactly.
some of the hand drawn stuff to be more, easily accomplished.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now it's not so much just a time saver, but it's also like quality
Yeah.
at this point. Now
Like
that we
a-
have the ability to do quality.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it would be unheard of for, like, Bride of Magnus is a really
yeah.
good example of a modern anime that is beautiful. Like, it does go for that aesthetic. Like, that is definitely something it's trying to do. And, I mean, again, I don't remember seeing much CGI, but it's a modern enough anime, and me thinking about those scenes, I'm like, oh no, they probably definitely used
Yeah,
some
all
stuff.
the motion, all the coloring,
Mm-hmm.
like any of the effects, like I mean, and that's the thing. Our understanding of what CGI, like we got trained really early on, like in like Justice League cartoons and stuff,
Yeah.
to be like, oh, that's what CGI looks like.
Hey, oh, they used a computer? That's
to make
not
that car, or that
Yeah.
crane, or that like other piece of garbage. That like now we watch anime and like we can't even tell that like something is CGI because what that means has developed so much. Like Kill la Kill again, like
I had
the
no
perfect
idea.
example. Of, like
Like-
you would never guess that, like because it's so
Yeah.
stylized
Yeah.
to look scratchy and messy and
Yeah.
like somebody drew it.
And I feel like unfortunately now because we've been so ingrained with like cartoons as like a culture, it's
Yeah.
that it's so hard sometimes to appreciate those hand drawn anime. Sometimes
Yeah.
people might think that, oh, this isn't done properly. Like if you look at certain animes like Your Lie in April, which is mostly just drawn, and you can see like a lot of it's honestly pretty two-dimensional
Yeah.
because the main focus on that was music. So they're
Right.
like, okay, we're going to focus more on music, and we're going to also like kind of make it more this older look because we're doing classical music instead of
Yeah.
like a modern type. It's not a battle anime, it's a slice of life anime.
Exactly.
And so that's where they wanted to put their focus. And for a lot of people, it's like that's not what they want to watch. They want
Right.
to watch people beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah,
Well,
and
exactly.
it look cool.
Absolutely.
Shonen dominance. Like,
That is where we are right now.
no, it's, on the flip side though, that same kind of thing. Like they go completely the opposite direction with music and the animation in like Redline. Like.
Oh, I was thinking that.
CGI, but like the soundtrack is much more industrial and
Oh, yeah.
electronic. Yeah.
It definitely, that gives that movie a lot of body. Because you need the fusion of the two, and, we're getting to the point where they're all blurred, and we want to get to the point where they're even more blurred. I mean, I want to see...
Well, like it's serving to better it. Like
yes,
absolutely.
exactly. And soon we're going to have... Like, that's why I always say it. Like, the Berserk attempt...
Yeah.
Like, let's say that, because we can agree that it wasn't successful.
That came out, what, a year, 2 years
couple
ago?
years ago.
2017 was the second season.
Yeah. And I
It's been a
see
year?
exactly, and I see no reason why we shouldn't be trying. And then the CGI and like any sort of incorporation of it into animation is just a better example of us, getting better at it. And if certain, I get why some people would be annoyed that certain anime doesn't deserve to be sort of like a test run for animation
Well,
stuff.
again, I think they're just misconstruing like quality or like quality CGI with like just calling it CGI like right now. Because like we're saying, like masterpieces are made with CGI. But CGI done by a studio who's not all in or like doesn't have the
Yeah.
resources, like it
Yeah.
makes it apparent, and that's Berserk.
Yeah.
Because that's like both
Yeah.
sides of the coin. Is like masterpieces are made with CGI, and then like crazy masterpieces
Yeah.
are also made with
Yeah.
just straight drawing.
Depends on...
That's like saying crayons can't look good.
You just gotta have like a flexion on your pressure. But yeah, exactly, and that just depends on mostly the source material.
Yeah.
Because if you have a comic book all strewn out as the source material, certain hand-drawn animation becomes apparent and becomes a centerpiece of what they want to do.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh no, we want to capture that panel exactly. So we're looking to hit a little bit of 2D feel to it. My Hero Academia, I haven't seen too much CGI at all, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, they're using a lot of digital editing to
exactly.
make everything work.
I'm just talking about the visual aesthetic, but then they're very much like, I've read the whole manga, so they have a lot of times where they're like really being faithful to the drawn sensibilities.
And I love with watching My Hero Academia, it feels so manga to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like
the
I love
comics
like
are coming out strong.
Yeah, I love like the scenes where they have just like still like minutes in the middle of battle, and you're just like, oh, like I can see this is how this is drawn.
Yeah.
Especially like when you have with like Bakugo's face, it is so manga.
Exactly.
Which is great. Like in one of the more recent episodes. Spoiler alert. They do a great animation thing where they it's Bakugo trying to escape from the League of Villains, and they do this scene that like does literally like like all of your CGI here and then all of your like hand drawn anime here where they do the scene of him like they like have like the main heroes they jet above. And they have like Bakugo, he's supposed to like blast himself out. But the way they animate it, they completely CGI'd it. There's like lock proportions, and we're just gonna move him in a 3D field. In a like solid pose. And it's and it's a ridiculous distance. Like the manga in no way gets even nowhere close to like the scale they create with the CGI because they can do it so easily.
And I love
and they have him blast off in like a single pose. But then they flip right from that to like a still frame of them like flying through the air and his facial expressions being completely hand like scribble drawn on.
And then like and then I just go straight to the grab and they're just like, here I am. Like I was just straight on a hoverboard and now I'm here.
The fusion between two, that's how you get dynamic stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, that's that like like that huge motion is so different from like what we'd expect a hand drawn to do. It feels superhuman. Like, which is
exactly.
like
I
exactly
felt like
what
it
you want
actually
to do.
happened. I was like, oh, he went that far.
And back to Trigger's stuff, I mean, that's definitely what you want to do. You want to have those moments of dynamic, like that's what they did in the sports festival too.
Right. You want back and forth.
Yeah,
like, you can,
and then in Trigger they'll have the still frames a lot. The postcards, and then they also use that. So you gotta have a little bit of everything. CGI now I'm glad that it has gotten to the point where it's not just something that we're worried about. It's a viable tool that we expect to see now.
Yeah.
Now we're just at the point where we're like, we want to see it done well, and we know what it being done poorly means.
Exactly.
Yes.
And what the first use of CGI in anime I could find when I was doing research for this was in 1985.
Okay.
For Golgo 13. If you're not familiar with Golgo 13, it's about a hitman who basically every episode it's like, I gotta shoot this guy. But he's like, like a super stoic, like, wears the turtleneck and is a sniper,
Of course,
basically.
yeah.
But they do a scene where they do a helicopter scene with him, basically. And they did the helicopter in CGI, and like that was the first time like it made sense for them to like use CGI in an anime.
Yeah.
But that's so interesting to me because like 1985, like sure that was 35 years ago almost, but like that's not that long ago.
Yeah.
Like, it's still
really
pretty
not.
recent. Like that feels. And all they did was for one thing in an entire series, like
No, and that was that's it shows how far it's
budget.
come.
Yeah.
We're getting really good. And as someone who studied animation briefly and found that not to be his calling, it is definitely now the cornerstone of pretty much all animation is computer based. I mean, obviously. But going into college, I thought that there would be some sort of translations. I remember I was being told going into college that all I needed was drawing skills, and then they teach me the rest.
The computer, yeah.
That makes sense. However, a sort of awareness and a integration of computer into normal, basically like coding and stuff. The professor was like, okay, this is level 0, this is level 10. We're going to start at level 10. If you don't know what this is, then this isn't for you, And that taught me that wasn't my field, which was important, but it also just speaks to how there is no time now.
There is no other way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You just need to go in this direction because it's only getting better, it's only getting easier.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, video games are looking better than ever.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
crazy. It's crazy. I mean, it is just E3 was nuts.
The Detroit game or whatever that is.
Chills.
Short games are, well, yeah, we're gonna. That's the
Becoming
Uncanny
human.
Valley
Oh my
stuff,
God.
So yeah, we got a lot of stuff.
Well, like on like Detroit or like Quiet Rain, like we had that anime. I mean, we had remember when Advent Children came out?
Oh my
yeah.
God.
That's a full. that is a full CGI Hollywood movie quality anime. Like that's,
I remember
that's what it is.
I remember
like,
being I remember like backing up and just like clapping. I wasn't even a big like Final Fantasy fan, but I was like, okay, they nailed that. They nailed that.
It's
Those
the only
fight
Final
scenes.
Fantasy thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like
that's
why I feel like Final Fantasy and like Kingdom Hearts. That's why I see it as anime, because I was introduced as that, and it's like with that being CGI, it's like this is anime, but it's CGI. Like all of it is CGI. Like mind blowing, foreign, amazing.
So you're saying that was kind of like the perfect catalyst for you, the perfect fusion, I should say.
Right.
Yeah, you saw Kingdom Hearts.
And that was what, 2007? Advent Children, I think?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that, again, like just like
Wow, same time as
1985, we got one single helicopter, and then in 2007, we got an entire
11 years ago
feature-length movie, like fully in CGI, fully like realized to like its potential, like not as a cost-saving measure, not as like a way to do it like
purposeful,
differently, but completely like no, we can just do a movie like this. It's not a problem. Like.
Yeah, shows a real growth in the.
And we're still growing.
Exactly.
It's only going to get better from here, and I'm so excited.
I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
None of us are.
Well, what we need is more scenes like the Bakugo scene and the other.
Yeah,
scenes.
things like because like that's like the particulate field in like Voltron. I was like, that's something I haven't seen before, and the same thing with the way they have Bakugo move so much distance so quickly at like perspective scale. Like it's like. No, like that's crazy. I've never seen another animator have that vision before.
Exactly.
And it not look weird.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm sure now we're to
because the
point.
storytelling was there, which is like it's finally.
That whole scene leading up to
yeah.
that, I was just straight bawling at that point, and it just made it so much more impactful to see it animated in that sense, because it was just so explosive and it just made it real. And I think that's where we're getting at with anime is we can combine these two styles seamlessly and it create the emotion, which in my opinion is mostly what anime does for me. It's just
it's an emotional,
so much emotion,
yeah, exactly. That's
and
an
then
emotional
create
connection.
the visual along with it.
Yeah, like you were saying, like I remember in the manga, like it pretty much goes directly from, what's his face saying like, hey, the red-haired guy saying like,
Red
come,
Riot.
Red Riot. He's saying come, and then Bakugo just like grabs him immediately in the next panel. So, but they recognized they recognized in the storyboard, and I'm sure they're like, no, that's the moment we want to linger
we need
on.
to emphasize.
So how can we stretch that out comically?
Absolutely.
And they just
unlike the like 10-minute fist bump and
CGI. You see, the thing is, CGI can destroy some things. Like, obviously, there was a lot of bad things about that movie.
Guys, my favorite movie of all time. Stop it.
Yeah, no, it's just because actors, especially with live action stuff, actors are not there. It's weird.
Well, it's tough. I mean, an actor who is any good at an adult stage, like in, let's say, anything prior to 2010, had never acted, like charades and given a good performance, because like that had never been a thing before. They've never had to imagine that there's a like small talking raccoon next to them.
Right,
Like
that wasn't the
that hasn't happened before. So like that
It's not
acting is
easy.
emerging. Exactly.
Yeah, like
Speaking
there's-
of Guardians,
go ahead.
Guardians of the Galaxy, they have that scene in the very first movie where Chris Pratt is dancing. I remember feeling very strange about that scene because I'm a big fan of Parks and Rec, so I knew that actor's sort of like. He was a very kinetic actor. He was a goofy guy. And I was like, why does he seem so stiff? No one else felt that he was stiff. I definitely saw those dance moves. And I get it. Maybe he was supposed to be lame. But, like, he thought he was alone. The whole idea for me was like, oh, yeah, he's really just going in. But he was just really stiff. And when I asked you that question, you were like, yeah, it's probably because,
He's dancing in front of 30 people on a green screen.
He's not
like
really... He's like, I don't...
He's standing on, like, 3 cardboard boxes.
Yeah,
like
it's
there
strange.
was the scene, I was watching like the behind the scenes features of The Hobbit, and oh god, why can't I remember his name? Gandalf. He's like
Ian McKellen.
Thank you, Ian McKellen. God, I'm so sorry.
Magneto.
He said that he straight up cried because he's doing the scene and he's supposed to be doing it with all the hobbits, but no one's there, so it's just him and these fake people, and he's like, this isn't acting to me.
They don't have this no emotional connection, and that's very important. I am, however, a fan of, as long as we're on the Lord of the Rings, Benedict Cumberbatch did body motion capture for smell.
Yes.
And
Chills.
seeing some of those shots of him writhing on the ground like a lizard, I'm like,
He's the best.
this is worth CGI entirely.
Right.
This
I would
is
just
worth
watch that.
everything.
It's like
I would
Doctor
just
Strange
watch
at the
that.
water park. Like,
That's my
Yes.
favorite video.
But like, it's interesting, kind of like flashing back the other way. There was this anime they did that was experimental back in like 2011. It was called Aka no Hana,
Okay.
and what they did was they filmed live action scenes of actors,
Okay.
and they literally used like basically a filter, an anime filter. So they basically just did this like computer program that drew over top of real live action actors.
It's like rotoscoping?
Yeah, it's exactly what it was. It was like a rotoscope like algorithm that they ran on top of them, and it's super interesting because it takes reality and it puts anime on top of them, so it's stripping away all this detail that you'd see like in reality, like seeing these textures and the way lights bounce off things and reflections and things and like skin tones. Like when you see an anime character, they maybe throw 2 skin tones like on a face, but like a face is like there's blood vessels underneath and all this thing, but like putting the like rotoscope filter over top of that stripped away like all of their like humanity.
Yeah.
Like exactly
Flat dolls.
and it ended up with they used basically these like really flat kind of silent characters, and they're voicing on top of it too. So like even the mouth movements, like they're perfectly fluid, like a human mouth would be if they were saying something to you.
Sweet.
But like then it's voice acted over top, and it's not like you don't see the lips move perfectly like a human lips do because you're not seeing skin stretch or move or
that's
glisten.
weird. Oh,
You're
that's
just
weird.
seeing like the shape move up and
That's
down.
so
I don't like
weird.
It was a
that.
very
I don't like
strange
that.
anime, and it only went for 1 season, but like it didn't work. It was very like, it worked for itself, like, but it clearly wasn't like a production technique. It was like this is an avant-garde thing that like adds to this story,
Right.
Because of like we're trying to talk about like middle schoolers kind of not having identity or like finding who they are and like stripping away and it meant a lot for that story. But it just seemed like we're not going to be injecting more live action into anime to make it easier, make it to make.
That's not the right
CGI
equation.
is the kind of direction,
For sure.
Yeah.
Like that's like Perfect Blue like is an example of like originally that movie was going to be live action, but to save money they hand drew animated everything,
Which is
which
crazy.
seems counterintuitive to us, but like, that was
actors-
cheaper back then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actors are a lot of money.
Oh yeah. For sure.
And then you to CGI is cheaper, and then like now we're into like this new. Like, it's CGI is almost like kind of tough to call it too because like it's more like machinima in the sense that it's like no, they did like a video game engine with all of their models and everything, and they just play dolls with them.
Yeah.
Like,
Literally, yeah.
They're not like per scene. I mean, in anime right now they still are like per scene kind of creating like the CGI.
Yeah.
But like in like Advent Children, it's like no, they just made 3D models
Yep.
with hair textures and move them around like.
Yeah, speaking of video games, Dragon Ball Fighter Z did an amazing job of conveying an anime feel
my
with their
God.
CGI.
Yes.
That stuff
Yes.
looks very. I mean, it's different than all the other Dragon Ball Fighter games before it in the sense that those always looked a little. They didn't look like anime characters.
Yeah.
Because they were.
They had that like Toon Link cell shade kind of look to them.
Because fighting games requires, I mean, I'm sure that's definitely the reason, but this one found a perfect way that when you're fighting with this character, and then at the end when they flash to the character for the cut, or they flash the character for the attacks, it looks like it's right out of an anime,
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
seamless. So that's
That was,
really cool.
Like watching, because I was watching you guys on Twitch, watching it was almost like watching an anime fight,
Yeah.
which was really cool.
That's
So
what's
like
good about
as
it.
a viewer, being able to watch someone else play that game, and I'm a big I love Twitch and I love watching people, and to see it almost just look like an anime, I was like, oh, this looks like it could actually be an anime fight, except this person would never actually win.
Yeah.
No, you seen Yamcha kick Golden Frieza. Beautiful stuff.
But no, I mean that's my thoughts on CGI. Did you guys have anything else?
I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
I'm
Not
not ready
sure.
for what comes next.
Yeah.
I'm ready and I'm excited.
Yeah, I know it'll all be good. I want to see more Bakugo flying through the air.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Mach 10.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the rest of Baruto. 'cause,
Exactly.
Is there a lot of CGI in that? Or?
Honestly, I
Because it's
mean,
new?
yes and no. They try to keep it more to where it's still like that Naruto feel,
Okay.
but it's definitely very, very much computer drawn,
Right,
and you
it's
can
Yeah,
tell.
like, all the colors are like tracked into
Yeah.
like the
Yeah, and you can see
CGI,
like movement, like there's no real movement. Like it's still like the hair is still very stationary. It doesn't move around at all. It stays in one place, and it's still very much so.
Rocket.
But they still make it newer and brighter. Like Baruto is pink. Like it's
Yeah,
just,
I love.
yeah.
That's this on Baruto and like how the animation kind of brought it from life. Like we're used to like beginning Naruto still had like a lot of like the remnants of like we're just getting into like our computer generated color palette.
Man.
But
some of those fight scenes were always very interesting too.
They're like in that fusion state where it's not that they're not using CGI. It's just like the technology isn't quite there yet. Like they don't have as wide a color gamut yet. Like the tracking's not as easy to do. So like they're kind of like switching back and forth. But like that's the thing I love about Boruto. It feels like his kids anime because it's so much brighter and like the tech and like the
and they
art
have
style.
they have like little like
breasts aren't exploding. Like,
they do like fireball jutsu like only a few times and it's like a big deal, but they use mostly like Naruto Boruto plays around with like a Game Boy kind of thing almost, and that's how they play like this fighting game with each other instead of training like they do in Naruto.
Oh my God.
And they play, and
That's
it's more they're being raised in a simple city at this point, and that's I could talk about that forever.
that is like absolutely a series too where like the CGI is really subtle.
Yeah.
In the sense that they're not using like set piece CGI.
Yeah.
But they're really using it in like the everyday animation of the episodes, and it's adding to kind of how the story like.
Yeah, they're making it more of a modern
previous,
anime because you look at original Naruto, then like Naruto Shippuden it definitely starts to get more CGI, and then Boruto you
Fight
can
with
just
pain.
tell.
I remember seeing a lot of that.
And you can just tell that they're integrating the CGI like you said in a way that it's just normal, not like oh there's a giant rock and that's where the fight's gonna happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's the way it's going, and that's how it's going to be. It's
definitely
see
going
it
in a good
drawn,
direction,
and it's still like it still gives you that better
Exactly.
feel to it. Yeah.
It feels more refined. It feels
exactly
fresher.
more refined.
Kind of funny you mentioned like that CGI like rock set piece. Let's just like to like just kind of equalize with like hand drawn. Let's not talk about how like like oh yeah we drew this background but like only this one thing only this one twig is gonna move, so like it's obviously
it's
like
bright,
goddamn like hand drawn on in like a
Yes.
different resolutions, like just to like give us like like that's why people when they go back and watch some hand drawn stuff it's like really
I remember.
I wonder which stone is gonna fall loose.
Land Before Time. That was big in Land Before Time.
Exactly, and that just has to do with the technology of like. I mean, it's a background painting. We're not gonna like draw this like the same way. Like we don't need to roto that to move. Like, but anyway, guys, that's our thoughts. It's a KO.